I'm delighted to have been invited here. I thank you for coming. There must not have been anything good on TV tonight. Wait a minute, isn't American Idol on tonight? Thank God for TiVo, you wouldn't be here. So I learned a very interesting fact about your university just a little while ago, which was that you are the only university in the United States with a license to bottle and sell its own wine. And I agree. So I had the opportunity to sample the wine just moments ago. It was fantastic. But I do want to go on the record in saying that if you find my talk tonight incomprehensible, it's the university's fault. It's okay. So it was fed to me. I'd like to begin tonight with a little experiment. Very simple, painless, slightly disgusting. I'd like to ask you to do this. I'd like to see a show of hands. Raise your hand if, after you use a public restroom, you don't wash your hands. Okay? 1, 2. I got 2, 1 for real. One. This guy, I don't know if he's for real. 2 for real. Shockingly, in the university setting, you get a few more than elsewhere. A few more. Here's the truth. Very few of you are raising your hands here, and I'm sure you are a particularly sanitary group of people. But I'm also sure that a lot of you are lying. And I know you're lying because I've looked at the data. So there's been some academic and medical research into this, but also I gather my own data in this realm. I fly a lot these days, and very often I'll get off an airplane, I'll go to the restroom in the airport, and I'll use the restroom, then I'll wash my hands at the sink, and then sometimes I'll just hang out at the sink with my notebook and watch after to see how many are washing their hands after they use the restroom. Now, I've only done this in men's rooms so far. I haven't tried it. But what I'll find is that if you see a 60% hand washing rate, that's pretty good. Okay, now these are people who are using the restroom after getting off a plane, and only 60% of them are washing their hands, okay? But if I brought those 40% of the non-washers in here and sit them with their friends and colleagues and peers, they're not going to raise their hands either, right? It's all about the circumstance of the way in which, in this case, the question is asked, or to look at it a slightly more scientific way, the way in which the data are gathered, okay? Does that mean that people who say they do wash their hands are liars if they don't? Not necessarily. There's a study, you know, hand washing can seem like a kind of banal example. There's one arena in which it's very important, which is in hospitals. There's a huge number of deaths each year caused in hospitals due to bacterial infections that are passed along by the lack of good hand hygiene among medical personnel. This problem has been going on for 150 years. Doctors are educated in the subject very well, and yet they are the worst offenders. In Australia, there was a study where they looked at a group of doctors on one ward for a period of a few months, I believe, and they asked them to note and report later their hand hygiene compliance rate, how often they wash their hands when the opportunity afforded, the opportunity required. Little did those doctors know that they were being observed, they were being spied upon at the same time by nurses. There were nurses spying on them. At the end of the period, the doctors were asked to report their own hand hygiene rate, and they reported 73%, which to me sounds pretty good. A doctor's life is very busy. There's a lot of competition for time. It's very intense. 3 out of 4 opportunities, they're washing their hands. The only problem is that those same doctors who, as I said, were being watched by these nurse spies, their actual hand washing rate, as seen by the nurses, was 9%. So you go from 3 out of 4 to 1 out of 10. Does that mean that the doctors were lying? I wouldn't say quite. All right, you would say yes. Maybe some. It's what one might generously call a perception gap, right? The point is, we all have perception gaps. We all assess our own performance probably differently than we assess other people's performance. But the real point here is that gap between the 73% and the 9%, or the gap in the banal example of airport restrooms between nearly 100% here and 60%. What we try to do with Freakonomics is measure that gap. And what that gap is very often the difference between what economists call your declared preference, that is, what you say you will do or what you say you believe in, and your express preference, which is what you actually do or how you actually behave, not so much your belief, but your behavior. And so we're really all about the data as much as we can be, instead of hoping or thinking or supposing that something might be true.